if we're talking about being yourself and being authentic, knowing that it's okay that you're not always everything to everybody. You don't have to show everybody every part of you. Welcome to the Fearless Foodie, the podcast that gets honest about what it really takes to thrive in food and retail. I'm Amy Wilkinson, coach, speaker and trusted partner to food industry teams with lived experience of the pace, pressure and politics that come with the job. Fearless Foodies cut through the fluff and get straight to what actually helps. And that's exactly what we're here to do. Let's dive in. Welcome to this week's episode of the Fearless Foodie Podcast. I am joined by co-host Danny Franklin. He's back.
Hey, I can't believe you've let me back.
Well, you know, I couldn't get anybody else at short notice. No, not really. I'm so pleased to have you back, Danny. I really loved our conversation that we had at the start of the series. So if you are listening and you haven't listened to that, you need to go back and listen to that, because that was another great conversation that me and Danny have had. But Danny, just in case anybody is listening and is like, who is Danny Franklin? Just give us a really quick intro, because they might not have listened to that episode.
Yeah. So I'm Danny Franklin. So I'm Group Commercial Director at IFP UK. Basically, we're a group of commercial food testing laboratories working across the UK, supporting FBOs. I've worked in the industry 22 years in loads of different roles, more recently moving into directorship positions in the last 3 years. And then I think we've known each other for several years, really, haven't we? Kind of talking, meeting at events.
Yeah, and then Microsearch sponsored the podcast as well. But I have to say, when I asked Danny if he would co-host, I made sure it was explicitly clear that I was inviting Danny on, and it had nothing to do with you sponsoring the podcast, because I didn't want you to think that it was like, oh, well, I've got to ask him. It's because I genuinely like you as a person, Danny, and knew that the listeners...
I like you as well.
Oh, feel the love, everybody. And it kind of leads to what we're going to talk about today, because we're going to talk about being real. And can you tell, Danny, I'm like, I don't want to say the word because I hate the word.
I say it for you?
You say it.
Authentic.
There's something about the word authentic I don't like, and we can talk about why that is. I think it's because it just gets overused, and people say it. People that are really inauthentic say it.
Yeah, they do, don't they? Yeah, that's exactly what it is, actually. Yeah. People who you don't trust. Yeah.
Well, you know, I like to be very authentic, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Whatever.
So I think it is a bit, it can be a bit performative, but I think what we really want to talk about is how to be a real leader, how to be true to yourself and just be you and be a leader. Is that the episode you planned, Danny?
That's the episode that you've planned, and
we've planned together.
I'm supporting you with. Yeah, no, exactly right. I think it's really, really important that, and I'm going to say it again, so apologies. It's really important that you're authentic. And actually, you're right, Amy. I hate that word as well, and good. I tend to say being myself or being yourself. Yeah. And I think I've learned over the years from my own experience, but also the experience of other leaders and how they do things. Over the years, I've managed to put together a bit of a system that I think, that it's really important, actually, that you are yourself, but there are boundaries and there are rules that apply and things you've got to take into account when you are being yourself as well. It's not that simple.
Yeah. Because I do think there's really something in that, because I think there's a lot of talk and businesses nowadays that say, I want you to feel it's safe to bring your whole self to work and all of this, like, sort of, a little bit cheesy as well in terms of that authenticity thing. And sometimes that can get misconstrued by people like, well, this is who I am, so you just got to put up with it. Yeah. Like, it's not an excuse for bad behaviour. Like, exactly, you can bring your whole self to work, but just don't be a dick. Like, when you're doing it. If your whole self is a dick, don't bring it to work.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I think it's an important one that people distinguish between, because the other thing is, I think there's a risk that people use it as an excuse to just overshare as well. Well, I'm just being authentic. Like, I think it is okay to show a bit of vulnerability. It is okay to be a human and show a bit of emotion at work and stuff like that. But it's not okay to be like visibly flapping and like upsetting people around you by oversharing about something really personal or whatever. You know, it's like, what's the boundary of that?
It's a really interesting point, the oversharing, because for me, I think there's kind of two avenues. There's one, and I've seen it before, people who overshare business-related information that they shouldn't be sharing because, you know, they just can't not tell people, and especially if they're managing people who were once their friends or family members and that kind of thing. It's difficult for people. So there's oversharing things that, you know, for the time being, you need to keep that private, not share it with anybody.
Yeah, but that can be quite hard, isn't it? And that's something when you get into a leadership role that is like a new thing. Like I can't share this with my work bestie. Like I can remember being in a business and it was going into consultation, and I was told the day before everybody else, because I was out with the customer and the customer knew, so they had to tell me, that I didn't sleep that night because I was worrying about all the people around me, and I really wanted to tell somebody, but I couldn't. It would have been unprofessional of me to tell. Yeah.
Slightly separate topic, I guess, but it happens with me a lot because of the job I have working in the food industry, working with lots of really well-known brands and companies. There have been occasions over the years where, you know, my friends and family out of work have said, all right, so tell me, which food company should we avoid then, based on the results? You're like, I'm not telling you.
I'm going to tell you I got a positive listeria, am I?
Yeah, exactly. And that applies within work as well. It's exactly the same principle. You might have a friend that you're managing or a friend in a different department. And I'm sure there'll be times when they say, why didn't you tell me that you were doing that?
Yeah.
I couldn't. You've just got to accept that I couldn't.
Yeah.
And that's why there's a boundary there.
Yeah. So, you know, we were using the word authenticity, but you can be yourself at work. And and I think it's important that you are, because it's exhausting if you're putting a mask on all the time. But what the key is, what we're talking about, is that boundary between professionalism. Like, because I always think this when people are like, well, if I'm bringing my whole self to work, but really, like, I am not bringing the person to work that sits on the sofa in in my hoodie, like eating shit and watching Netflix. You know, it's still me, but it's not the part of me that I want to share with work. Like we all have private. Right. I was going to say we've all got private parts. I mean, that's a bit wrong, isn't it? Like, I don't know. It's just going in. But we have parts of ourselves that we don't want to share with other people. And there's something about that balance, isn't there? But I think it is important to be yourself. You were going to say something else about oversharing, like a different part of overshare.
I was just going to say that. So that's one type of oversharing, talking about business-related topics that you shouldn't be sharing. But then there's like the other side. So, you know, you might have somebody coming into work and telling you what's happened at the doctor's appointment that they've just had. You know, you hear of things like that, don't you? And oversharing in the personal life. And something I see a lot of, which I find really interesting, related to oversharing, is when people are not in leadership roles and then develop into leadership roles, it's really hard if you've been a person that always overshares. It's really hard to make that transition to then not overshare. Yeah. Because so I want to encourage the listeners to, if you've got an aspiration to be a leader in the future, start thinking about things like that now.
How would you behave?
How important it is that you don't do that. And what it looks like to other people when you do it.
Yeah, because I just think about it on like a friendship level. If you know that you've got a friend that's always gossiping about everybody else, you learn, don't you? Well, I ain't going to tell anything with... There's a sports massage person that lives near us, and everybody that goes to her, she's really like... She'll always say something like, you know, patient confidentiality, but so we're always like, I won't say her name, but I'm always like, if you want some gossip to get around, go and see her, tell her what's going on, and it'll get around. But it's not like it's fine, like, but I would never tell her something I didn't want to, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, actually, do you want to be that person that people don't want to confide in because they don't trust you? No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You absolutely do not.
Yeah.
You're doomed. If you want to be a leader or you are a leader and you don't have trust,
Yeah.
people don't trust you, you're doomed. Yeah, I think as well, just separate to that, I think what's really important about being yourself as well is being kind of proud of where you've come from.
Yeah.
As well, because I think there's an element, and I can only really comment on me, but an element where, if you come from a certain background and you've got a certain financial situation or you've had certain experiences, then perhaps when you're in a leadership role, you might feel that they're not valid or not important, or someone might look at you and say, what, someone who's come from that and have those experiences is leading me and leading this team or leading this company. And actually those experiences are the only reason you're there today doing that job. And I think that's really important. And that's the bit about being yourself. That aspect really matters to me, that you tell people your story.
Yeah.
And hopefully there'll be enough people who go, wow, well, if that person can do that, and I've had that experience and I've had that experience, that's what matters, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think it makes you relatable, and it's inspiring, isn't it? People actually really enjoy those stories. But when I first asked you about co-hosting, this was the reason that I wanted you to co-host on the podcast, is because you are extremely down to earth. You don't pretend to be something you're not. You probably do yourself a disservice a little bit, but I keep saying I'm going to work on that a little bit.
I'll have to book in some
coaching sessions. You can get a bit for free. That's your fee for coming on the podcast.
Nice.
So I think the point is, for people listening, I think that sometimes we feel like, we've stepped into a role and we have to put a full mask on. And I think what we're saying is, yes, you have to have a level of professionalism, but you still have to remain being you. And actually, if you pretend to be something that you're not, it's exhausting. And people can't relate to you in the same way. I do think we have spidey senses, don't we? And right at the beginning when I was saying about those people that use the word authentic and they're not authentic, we know as humans, you can just see it. You see it in their eyes. Yeah. You see it in their smiling, but their eyes aren't smiling. All of that. It's like, you're full of crap. This is not, that you're not really who you say you are. So there's definitely something in that.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree.
And talk about your experience then because when we were prepping, you told me some great examples of where you'd been authentic and it hadn't necessarily gone as well, or give us some live examples. You just said you're good at this storytelling stuff.
It's funny because I guess for me it's all just been a really steep learning curve, and I guess it'll be a learning curve forever. I don't think it's anything that you're ever going to master. You're constantly learning, and you're only as good as the last project you managed, or the last team you managed, or the last company you managed. You're only as good as that. So definitely always learning. But one thing that really stands out, and I've got to be careful about mentioning any names or anything in this. So I'm gonna kind of sense check it. But I remember once, about 7 or 8 years ago, I got invited to a really big company, very, very corporate company, the most corporate company that I've ever experienced. And actually, when I arrived there, I've never been more out of my comfort zone in my entire life.
Was it somewhere that's got big offices and all of that?
Big offices, and there's a dress code, and there's a jargon that gets spoke around the company, lots of abbreviations and pseudonyms for different terms and words. I was expected to know what all those terms and words and abbreviations meant during the conversation. And within 2 minutes of starting the meeting, I realised really quickly that I am not presenting myself well in this environment at all. And the meeting was fine, it was absolutely fine, but I left and my confidence had gone from here to literally down here overnight. And I remember going home and thinking, I don't think this is for me. If this is what leadership and being responsible and presenting yourself as the face of a company. This is what it's all about. And I've got to expect this every time I'm out somewhere. I can't do it. I'm not the right person for the job. I'm too working class. I'm too common.
Yeah.
I haven't been university educated. But then I kind of had a word with myself over the coming weeks, and I thought, no, do you know what? It's actually all right that you're not able to be your best self in every situation.
Yeah.
That's actually all right.
Yeah.
And sometimes you will find yourself in situations with certain people and you think that didn't actually go to plan. I was being my authentic self. I was being true to my beliefs and true to my visions, but that didn't line up with that particular situation. And that's all right. You don't have to beat yourself up about it.
Yeah. Well, it weeds out the situations you don't want to be. So it's almost like if you go for an interview, you're much better off just being yourself, being like honest.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you need to prep your answers and all of that sort of stuff, because ultimately it's telling you whether you're aligned with that other business, isn't it? And that's the same because I'm guessing that you didn't get the contract.
No, I know, absolutely. You guessed right.
But you're please not the right word, but you accept that it wasn't the right thing. It wouldn't have been the right fit anyway, because you were being authentic, and if you had, because that's who they were going to be dealing with on a daily basis.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, time to give a quick shout out to the people making this podcast happen. These are the brilliant sponsors backing bold, fearless conversations like this one. Let's hear from them. Ensuring food safety and quality is crucial. That's why businesses trust Microsearch Laboratories, part of the IFP Labs group. UCAS accredited Microsearch offers microbiological, nutritional and allergen testing for food, drink and water, delivering fast results and expert support. With over 30 years of experience, trusted by leading manufacturers and retailers, and a commitment to sustainability, Microsearch is your partner in product safety. Visit micro-search.co.uk to learn more. The Fearless Leaders Programme is our flagship leadership development offer, designed for organisations who want to grow confident, influential leaders at every level. Whether you're supporting new senior leaders or investing in succession planning, we work as your L&D partner to deliver practical, tailored development that drives real impact. Find out more at fearlessfoodies.co.uk. And we're back. Let's dive right in.
And I think the biggest thing for me that I probably got some of the best growth out of my entire career dealing with that situation, because I learned, in my view, I learned a very hard way that being yourself and creating situations and people and teams where you are yourself is actually the most important thing. And I think you've got to always, whether you're running a company, managing a team, whatever you're doing, if you don't feel comfortable in that space and you're in the space, well, make the space comfortable so you can lead it and be yourself, but keep your own values and your own personality. I think that's so important.
Yeah. I'm sitting here thinking that actually there's some people listening where that is a tough balance. So if you are in a big corporate and you are, you do have to toe the company line to a certain degree, and you want to be yourself. But I think there are still ways of doing that. So because it's easy, well, I don't know that it's easy for us to say it, but you have been at the helm of a business, therefore you are able to shape it, not from the start, over 20 years. I run my own business, so it's easier for us to be authentic. And I think probably when I was in my corporate job, that was part of the reason I wanted to leave, was because I wasn't in line with my values and who I am. So I think there's probably something for listeners in terms of, because we can't tell everybody to leave their jobs because they don't feel that they can be fully themselves at work. but there is something in that. I think for people listening, if you don't feel like you can be 100% yourself at work, like it's almost using that evidence to work out what it is that you can't be yourself about. What is it about? Is it in your own head, or is it a real thing in the business that means that actually longer term you do want to look for another job, or you want to be doing a different role, or actually it's identified I can be myself with all of these people but not that one person. So what I actually need to work on is that relationship with that one person, because I know from when I burnt out, I think there was a massive part of it for me was because I was pretending to be I was pretending to have my shit together, and I didn't have my shit together. And actually, I'm not saying, like we said that right at the beginning, didn't we? I'm not saying I should have been running around flapping and telling everybody that like how I was actually feeling, but actually if I'd been a little bit more honest. So after I had my burnout, I moved into category management, and then I moved back to Backville where I'd worked before, which was a bit weird because obviously some people knew the old me and I'd been through all of this stuff. And part of it was I just wanted a fresh start. I didn't want people that knew that I'd had time off sick for stress, that knew I'd been through a divorce, all of that. Like, I just wanted to leave all of that behind. But what I did do when I joined Backville was take this suit of armour off that I'd had all these years of like pretending. Yeah. And because I still had physical illness that was left over from the burnout, I couldn't walk from one side of the site to another and then still be coherent in the meeting, like because of the illness that I had. So I had to, I'm not going to lie, like probably for the first 6 weeks I tried to do the mask. And then I was like, this is not going to be sustainable. I've just got to be honest with people. Like, the way you're going to get the best out of me is if you come to me because I have this chronic illness and it stops me being able to do X, but I'm still bloody brilliant at what I do. And then once I took that suit of armour off, I actually started to build better relationships. People could relate to me. You know, I was still friends with loads of people from that time because I was just not pretending to be something I wasn't. And it also allowed me, as part of in that marketing team that I was in, I started to talk about my burnout more publicly. I don't think I called it burnout at that point, but I started talking about mental health and all of that sort of stuff. And that helped everybody else in the team. So there's something about just being honest and being authentic that helps other people. And it probably led me to where I am now, because then I could see that there was a benefit to people hearing about what not to do.
It's kind of contagious, isn't it? Because if you're really guarded and closed off as a leader, then you're subconsciously promoting your team to be really guarded and closed off with you and with their colleagues. But if you're open and honest, what you find is every single person in the world has challenges, struggles, mental health, different illnesses. Everyone has things going on. And you either create an environment where people are embarrassed to talk about it or ashamed or think that you're going to get victimized or picked out or, reprimanded because you've got something going on, or you create an environment where people think, I can just mention that. Yeah. And no one's going to fire me or put me on leave or say, while you're going through that problem, we don't trust you to handle that situation anymore, because that stuff happens.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. And I was just thinking about an advert that I saw. I don't even know if it was on social media or whatever, but it was related to Pride and people wearing Pride lanyards or having something on them. And it was, I'm going to do it a disservice, but it was basically explaining how for somebody that is LGBTQ+, that just by, say, it had an example of going into an interview and feeling nervous and whatever, and then the person pulled and you could see the lanyard that had the Pride colours on it, and it's like, actually that is telling that person straight away that they are inclusive, and it just made that person relax. And it's almost the same thing. Like, I think there's something in this authenticity and showing more of yourself and having that vulnerability and telling people a little bit about yourself. And there is a fine balance, because I remember starting a job. Oh, no, it was a new person coming into the job, and she was my boss, and she massively overshared about her heavy periods and stuff. I was like, yeah, I don't need to know this. This is too much. There's a line, and she definitely crossed it. But, getting that sweet spot of sharing a bit of vulnerability about yourself makes it okay for other people to do it. And that's creating psychological safety. So in a psychologically safe workplace, people are more likely to speak up. They're more likely to challenge. Therefore, you're more likely to take risks, because people aren't as scared that they're going to make a mistake, because they know that it's not going to be frowned upon to make a mistake. and therefore a business can grow faster and innovate more.
Exactly. Yeah. How many situations can you think about? And I can think about several over my career where people have, because they don't feel like there's a safe space, they hide things when they do go
Yeah.
wrong. And then how damaging can that be? If, someone thinks, I daren't speak up, I daren't say anything because I'll get reprimanded or I'll feel embarrassed.
Yeah, and I won't say where it was or what it was, but I'm just thinking this links to you in microsearch world. I know of people that have hidden about poor micro results or listerias or whatever for that exact reason, because they didn't want to see it as a failure. Well, that's actually a flipping food safety risk,
Yeah.
And if you're creating a workplace where people don't feel like that it's okay to, I mean, that is literally somebody's job to do their job, then you've got a real problem.
You've got a real problem, yeah.
And actually, I think this comes back to this. I mean, that's a real rabbit hole, isn't it? But that it comes back to this: by being a leader that is being yourself, being approachable, it makes it safer for other people to do the job well and to do the same and not hide mistakes or ideas
absolutely.
as well. Ideas.
Yeah. And I think as well, for me, something that's also really important is, and I have mentioned it in previous conversations we've had, but being willing to be wrong is really, really important, because again, you find sometimes in leadership, some leaders will not be wrong, whether they are wrong. They cannot be wrong. And I think letting your team know that if you have an opinion and someone else has an opinion, you're willing to have your mind changed, or you're willing to openly say, right, everybody, I thought this was the best solution. You guys have made me realise that I was wrong. Let's run with that solution. I'm happy with that. That builds massive amounts of trust that you're willing to do that. And then not passing off those opinion changes as your opinion changes when you're speaking to your managers as well. Don't go there saying, right, I had to think over the weekend and now we're going to do this. Go, yep, my team came up with this suggestion.
Yeah.
And that builds massive amounts of trust. Also being willing to not know the answers to things.
Yeah.
And again, we've touched on that, but sometimes people, I've seen it before in leadership where you go into a meeting and the leader does all the talking for an hour just tells everybody what's going to happen and what needs to be done. And then everybody leaves. And actually what I've learned is do the least amount of talking in the room. So what I find works is introduce the meeting. Why are we there? Why are you all there? What matters? What do we want to get out of it? And then you let everybody else just say their bit, communicate, and you're making notes. And at the end of it, you summarise and come up with an agreed decision about what you're going to do. And as long as you do that, I find that the people that you're managing think, I've got a voice in this room, and people respect my opinion, and my opinion's considered in what the final decision's going to be. And there might be times where you have to put your foot down, of course, but as long as you're making that safe space where people have time and a voice and are not interrupted, it's so important.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of what we've talked about is we've kind of got over that word authenticity. Like, I think we're using it in the proper way that it should be used, not the way other people do. But effectively, it is about being yourself and therefore acting in line with who you are and what your values are and what matters to you. But it doesn't have to mean oversharing and telling everybody your every innermost thought about everything, because that isn't necessarily professional. And I think knowing that you are lots of different people, like if we're talking about being yourself and being authentic, knowing that it's okay that you're not always everything to everybody. You don't have to show everybody every part of you. Like I say, you do not need to see me with a box of chocolates on the sofa watching Netflix. Like that's kept behind closed doors for a reason. Do you know what I mean? And we all have different parts of us. And I think the other thing that we've really touched on is the more you are authentic and the more vulnerable you are to a point, like that boundary point that we talked about, that allows other people it gives other people permission to do the same, and then you start getting the best out of the people that you work with.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, they're all absolutely the take-homes that I had as well. So, yeah, totally agree with that. And I think as well, something that's also really important is sometimes you might find yourself in situations where you just can't be your own true self and be authentic. And sometimes it's just all right that that environment isn't for you. Yeah. And you can be your most authentic and your best self somewhere else.
Yeah. And I think if you are finding yourself in a business or in a job or in a situation outside of work where because I think this has happened to me in friendship groups as well, as I've evolved over time, where I'm having to be somebody else constantly, then it's exhausting. And that's a message to tell you to get yourself out of that situation.
Exactly.
But sometimes we have to do it for survival.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And because, it's like I wouldn't always choose to be in some, the mum's WhatsApp group at school, do you know what I mean? Or whatever. But, there's some situations where you just like, I've just got to go through the motions. But if you're spending your life going through the motions, you've got a problem kind of thing.
Exactly right. That's it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Danny. This has been another brilliant conversation.
Yeah.
Does he pass the test, everyone? Are we going to have him back next season?
I hope
Let us know.
I'd love to come back.
So if you're listening, tell us, what does authentic mean to you, really? And come and let us know in our DMs on LinkedIn, because we would absolutely love to hear from you. That's all you're going to hear from Danny this season.
And what a shame. I've loved it, honestly. And I say to you a lot, Amy, and I'm not joking, although I say it with a smile, but a very inspiring lady. And it's really nice being offered an opportunity to come and speak and take part in your podcast. So I've had a great time, and thank you for having me. Oh,
thank you, Danny. And do you know what? I feel like you do when you say that to me. I just think, because other people say that to you, don't you? And you're like, what? Like, what? Yeah. How am I inspiring?
Come on.
And I think that is the crux of us being authentic people, down to earth. We don't necessarily see the things in ourselves that other people see in us, and it's quite nice in some ways. So yeah. So
agreed.
Thank you. So next week we are going to have Gail Paddy with us, who is a Fearless Foodies coach, and she used to be the own brand director at Morrison's, and she also spent a lot of her career at Asda and Sainsbury's as well. So that's going to be a really great chat, hearing from inside the retail world and what it's like to work in retail. So looking forward to that one. But in the meantime, thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon. Thanks, guys. Bye.
That's a wrap on this episode of The Fearless Foodie. If it hit home, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready for less fluff and more real talk. And if you're ready to build a bolder, braver, more brilliant team, come find me at fearlessfoodies.co.uk. Until next time, be bold, be brave, be fearless.